Hey guys, it's your boy Ars, back at it again with another video. Been away for a bit, been busy with life and whatnot, but Acheron came out, and as I promised in one of my other videos that I would make a video when she came out, didn't do a polling video, didn't see a point. I got her, it was guaranteed, it was only 20 pulls, but that's not the point. That's not why you're here. So I have been watching a lot of videos from different creators. I'm just getting their thoughts on the viability of Acheron as a free-to-play. And I'm thinking about it. I've been free-to-play the entire time that I played this game. I have over 330 days logged on this game. I've been playing since it came out. And I'm thinking, I wonder how my freshly built Acheron unironically compares to the Jingliu that I've had for the past 6 months. So why not do a comparison? And I figure I show you the builds, I show you the traces and whatnot, and then I'll do 3 runs with a hyper carry Jingliu build and a free-to-play friendly Acheron build slash team. And we'll see how they compare, since everybody is hyping up Acheron. Not saying that she's bad or anything, or that she's really good. That's what we're going to find out today. I figured, why not just put it to the test? Let's just do the comparison. The strongest character in history versus the quote-unquote strongest character of today. So, we're going to take a look at it. My Acheron, like I said, has only been built for the past 3 days, so she's not all there yet, but I do have an SI5 GNSW E0. I think that my setup is pretty decent for now. Eventually once that 300% drop rate kicks in for the planar sets and the relics, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna farm, and then this will be much better. But right now I'm running the standard 4-piece that she always runs, but my planner set is the crit damage set. So the Celestial Diffuser. So that's what I have to use. That's what I got. Let's move on. Ron May, nothing spectacular here. Using memories of the past. Max traces. She is E1. She has okay crit, not crit damage, break effect, stat 180, which will go up to I believe 200. So she's all right. Got ourselves a E6 Gwenhyphen. I haven't maxed it out because I have been trying to max out like multiple characters at once. I maxed out my Gwenhyphen, then I maxed out my Bronya, and then I leveled up MC to 80. Then I leveled up March 7th to 80. But yeah, I haven't been able to upgrade this Lycone up to maximum yet, but it is SI4, so it doesn't particularly matter, and she's level 80. So we'll be using her, and then we'll also be using March 7th. I ended up with a crit rate, crit damage build. Haven't maxed out her traces or anything yet. Doesn't really matter. She's just here to apply the debuffs with the trend of the universal market. I literally only have 1 copy, and unironically just got her. Got this copy of the Lycone with Topaz in it 2 or 3 months ago. Probably less than 2 months ago, to be honest. So that's going to be her build. Then the hyper carry is going to include my standard Wombo combo, the Fu Shuan E1 max traces. All right, get that crit rate, crit damage, get that protection. My 240% crit damage Bronya with SI5 past and future. No Eidolons. I had to get her from the 300 guaranteed. And then let's scroll over my Jingliu. Obviously the other star of the show, SI5 Moth to Flames. I would say that my relic set is not bad given the ratio 47 over 210. And she is E1. I'm not going to be using Halo for this one, but I will be using Tingyun. And she is going to be obviously E6, max traces, dance, dance, dance. And like I said, the plan here is to very simply just test and see what happens with my hyper carry versus Acheron with a standard free to play friendly build. Is it super fair to Acheron? No, I'm aware that it isn't, but it's still interesting experiment anyway. So I'm going to record some footage and I'm going to do the math. I'm going to calculate how much damage the characters are doing, combined with the support. So if a character does damage and then the support boosts their damage, I will allow that to count towards the damage. Right? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do the math, and we'll get right back into this. All right, I am back. And in order to properly structure my thoughts so that I'm not waffling for infinity and 1 minute, I have made a presentation. And just to further clarify the test, just want to make sure everybody knows that when you get to the damage comparison, I am calculating the damage that is done by these characters individually, the damage that is done with them with the supports, and also, I am calculating the damage that is being done by their damage over times as well and their techniques. So I just wanted to clarify that so that once we get to the damage section, that there's no confusion regarding that. But just as a recap, these are the builds that I'm using. Like I said, Acheron's on SI5. She's 58 over 178. And then my Jingliu is 47 over 210, and she's using SI5 Multi Flames. As you can see, their speed is pretty similar if you're looking at it side by side, but one has much more attack than the other. Jingliu is able to run less attack, specifically because of the light cone that she's using. She gets more attack percent anyway, so her threshold is much lower. But because Acheron doesn't have a light cone that allows her to do that, that's the reason why she needs to have as much attack as humanly possible without having terrible ratios. These are the builds I'm using. As I said, using Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters on Acheron with I said diffuser in the initial part, but she's using the Celestial Differentiator. And then Jingliu is on Rudolin and Hunter of Glacial Forest. I would consider Jingliu's build to be pretty optimal, whereas Acheron's is suboptimal, primarily because it's not done yet. Despite this, Acheron actually won the DPS comparison. She got the better runs out of the three. So the first run, Acheron had the most damage and had the better average damage per cycle. The second run, Jingliu, she had the better cycles and the most damage, best average damage per cycle. And then for the third one, it was tied again regarding the cycles, the same as run 1. But Acheron had the most total damage and the highest average damage per cycle. And then if we compare it even further and break it down in terms of, let's look at the stats, let's look at the Carfax. Acheron has the highest total damage. She won the best 2 out of 3, had the highest run damage, and the best total damage difference. Plus, remember, she only using one 5-star support, and that being Raw Mei, whereas Jingliu, despite the fact having the better damage per cycle, she used less cycles overall, had the highest damage per cycle, and had the best overall run. She's using 2 supports. So Acheron just barely ekes out of this one, winning the first to 5 in terms of our arbitrary point system that we're going with here. Now, why did Acheron win? Well, the test is flawed. Is that really a surprise? I'm not a theory crafter. I am Feels Crafter Supreme over here, but I want to explain why the test is flawed. Because one of the issues that I had when I was watching a lot of content creators, they were doing their comparisons and whatnot, and this is something that was touched upon by Gotcha Smack, they didn't really compare it properly. Like they'll say, oh well, the free-to-play light cone, as an example, it does significantly less damage than her signature, not accounting for the different random variances between their free-to-play run and their sort of E0 S1 or E1 S1 runs. So I just wanted to explain that in order for people to know that I'm not just going to say Acheron wins and like there's no further analysis beyond that, right? So Jingliu's build is optimal, but the team isn't. The reason being is that usually with my Jingliu, my pure hyper carry comp usually has payload on it. And the reason being is that shreds grant greater damage gains than crit rate and crit damage by far. I have always seen higher damage numbers when Pela is on my team as opposed to when Fushuan is on my team. It sounds weird, but it is true because the defense shred, it has a greater multiplicative damage increase than the crit rate and crit damage. So I had Fushuan because it made it easier to do the run and it was safer to do the run. But if I could do it safely while using Pela, I would have done it with Pela, and she most likely would have won out pretty efficiently, pretty confidently over Acheron. Beyond that, also, I had not optimized this run for speed tuning. If I was using my setup that I used for my 0 cycle runs that I've showed before, this wouldn't have been an issue. I would say that I'm using a more safe hyper carry variance of the team. That's the reason why damage fall off was there, because Ting Yun wasn't granting attack buff before she went into her enhanced state. I was basically just going Bronya's skill as soon as the battle started to get her into the enhanced state just to start doing damage. But if I was using my other team, then I would have actually held off on Bronya, allowed the attack buff to attach first, and then had gone that way. Jingliu's damage over time is much lower than Acheron's. Acheron's damage takes twice and does way more damage. And then on top of that, Acheron's technique, straight up, I couldn't believe it that she was doing 100 to 200k damage total just by using her technique. I could not believe it. Every single fight, she was doing around 100 and I want to say 130,000 to up to 200,000 damage every time. So yeah, Jingliu's doesn't do any inherent or immediate damage. Beyond that, obviously, Jingliu isn't fighting elites that are all inherently weak to ice in MOC 10 for this version, whereas Acheron is. She's fighting elites that are inherently weak to lightning. And then there's also a boss, and because a boss has a greater health pool, she has more opportunities to do more damage. The buffs in general for Memory Chaos, they favor Acheron, and then beyond that, Acheron also has one of the, if not the most broken Harmony character that currently exists in the game, which is E1 Ranmei. She has 25% all-res pen, 20% defense ignore, 68% damage bonus, increased break effect damage, and it just goes on and on. It's just... It wasn't, when I started the video, I said kind of unfair to Acheron to do this to her. I was wrong. That's the reason why we test this stuff, right? However, while the test is flawed, it's not that it's like Jingliu had absolutely no advantages. It is mostly unfair, obviously. Acheron was E0, Jingliu is E1. Acheron has a S5 4-star, where Jingliu has a S5 5-star. Acheron's build is suboptimal. Jingliu is optimal, and then, or at least as optimal as we can get as a free-to-play. I could have gotten the quantum set. I didn't want to use that on her. Acheron isn't using her most optimal team either, to be fair to her, because she doesn't have 2 Nihility. Now, if she had 2 Nihility and was also using Fushuan, Acheron probably would have snapped a bit more than I showed, but it is what it is. And let's move on to the conclusions. So, the point here is to show you that literally anyone can make a character look insane if you have flawed testing and you exclude key context. That's just something that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at people who are doing these, basically doing the showcases. If they're not explaining to you why there's possible variances and they're just like saying definitively, oh, this straight up does more damage than the other, they're not showing you the numbers, they're not showing you why they got those numbers. And when you simplify something that isn't simple and you don't do it properly, that's when you can have, where someone is accidentally saying something that isn't necessarily 100% correct. We'll put it that way. even though the test was flawed, Acheron, regardless, is a great character. She can still measure up to a character, despite the fact that that character has literally been dominating the meta for 6+ months. And she can, out the gate, match up to her at E0 with no signature. It's kind of crazy. And then beyond that, the most important note for me after doing this test is that Acheron does have very legitimate free to play viability. However, does that mean that she's free to play friendly? So if you're currently thinking, oh, I still haven't pulled Acheron, I don't have Jingliu, I'm still thinking about it, maybe I can offer my perspective as a free to play. I say personally that it depends on your account and how much time you spent in the game. If you have less than 3 months in the game, I would recommend pulling for Jingliu as a new free to play player. If you have greater than 6 months in the game, I would recommend pulling for Acheron as a veteran free to play player. If you're in between that 3 to 6 month range, I think that your decision is heavily dependent on the factors that I'm going to be talking about moving forward. So I personally do not believe that Acheron is free to play friendly. I know that I'm going against all the major content creators by saying that, or at least some of the major content creators by saying that, but I do not believe that she is inherently free to play friendly. There's just too many light cones that you need that you can't farm in order to do solid damage. So you either need her signature light cone, you need to have Good Night Sleep Well, Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, Trend to Universal Market. All of these light cones are not things that, hop onto your account and just have those within the first 3 months of you playing the game. It's going to take a while for you to collect even a single copy. You might be able to get Good Night Sleep Well if you pull on the light cone, but if you have limited resources and you can't afford to do that, then it is worth considering maybe I should wait until I have all of these light cones, at least one copy of each, so that I have an easier time of getting those stacks up for Acheron to pop off. Beyond that, I think that she's also much harder to build around. I had to build up my March 7th and I had to build up my Fire MC just to be able to use her. Otherwise, she would have been even more inoptimal than she is now. And her best teammates are 5 stars. You got Welt, Silverwolf, Venturine, Sparkle, Rame, Kafka, Black Swan. All 5 stars, right? Her 4-star team comps and her general team comps are very rigid to free to play players. And if you don't have a large roster of characters, which you most likely aren't going to have if you're a newer free to play player, then you're not going to be able to function at I would say, an adequate level using Acheron. She'll still do decent damage, but it's going to take much longer for you to get stacks, so it's going to be kind of awkward. You can use the Fire and main character, but they're very mid, and their scaling is horrible. Even if you had them at E6, it's like his or her, whoever you're using, their shield is literally like even at level 15, it only takes like 7% of the total defense, plus a set amount. So it's like, the shields are not good on Fire main character, even with the taunt. I don't think that it justifies like fully building it. I tested out myself. I didn't like it. I liked March 7th a lot better. And this, the combination that I use, and I'm going to show a video at the end that shows off the combination. If you use Rame's ult and then you put a shield on March 7th, what will happen is that every time she does a counter attack, once she hits that follow-up, it'll apply that flower debuff that she puts on the other enemies that extends their break. The follow-up attacks will apply that to the enemies that attack her after she does a follow-up, which makes it faster to increase the stacks. So March 7th does work pretty well, especially with the Trend of Universal Market. The problem is that she can be very skill point hungry, so I can't exactly spam my Gwen as much as I would want to, her skill, because I'm concerned about running out of skill points for my Acheron or not being able to get my Ron May skill back up. You obviously can use Fermata if you want to, but then you're forced to use Sampo if you don't have Black Swan. And I don't like Sampo. I'm just going to be real, I don't like his playstyle. If you do and you don't care, makes no difference to me. But I think that compared to Good Night Sleep Well, that even if you get Fermata to S5, it just like pales in comparison to GNSW. You can also use Pela, obviously, but I think that she is significantly better suited for Jingliu. Now, for Jingliu, for my case, I think that she is significantly easier to build and build around. The only thing you have to do is build for a 40% crit rate, which is not hard to reach at all. And then all you can do is, focus everything else on your attack, your speed, your crit damage, and if you can get some EHR, you do that. And because it's so much easier for Jingliu to reach her crit rate and crit damage thresholds, it compared to Acheron, Acheron has a much harder time getting those crit rate requirements, those crit damage requirements, and her attack requirements. Her requirements are significantly higher than Jingliu because of that. And then also Jingliu, like I said, she has a Hurtus light cone that can literally just increase your attack for you, so you don't have to get to that high of attack threshold. As long as you get attack boots with that crit rate, get some crit rate substats, and get a crit damage body, you're pretty much good to go. Then for Jingliu, in terms of where she can be slotted, you can put her with essentially anybody. I ran her with Asta, I ran her with Tingyun, I run her with Wukong, I use her with Bronya, Ron Mei, Pela, Guanifan, Hushuan, Luocha, Bailu. I've even used her with Himiko. And she works well with virtually everyone that I played her with. My standard shell with her is Tingyun and Pela, or you can use her with Asta and Pela, or you can use any combination of sustains that are here. You can use Fushuan, you can use Luocha, you can use Bailu. If you have links, you can use links. The only character that I would not recommend that you use her with is Tasha, but I don't recommend anybody using Tasha because she's terrible. Beyond that, there's a lot of strong and decent light cone options for Jingliu. She has On the Fall of an Aeon that I've already talked about. Past and Future for your Harmony character that you're going to be using with her. Then you have Texture Memories, which is for your Preservation sustain. You can use Quid Pro Quo on Abundance, so on and so forth. Now, my recommendation is if you are going to pull for Acheron, I would recommend that you have GNSW, Resolution, and Trend. If you look at literally anybody's free-to-play guides on Acheron, they have all three of these light cones, and for some reason never bring up the fact that you cannot farm these. It's like, what do you do? What do you do if you don't have these three? Of course, you can swap to something else, right? Or at least for Acheron, you can not use Good Night Sleep Well and instead use Fermata. But what do you do to replace Resolution? What do you do to replace Trend? And this isn't something that I've heard be commonly talked about, so I'm bringing it up here. Just a thought, just a question. If you don't mind playing a long game in order to get the pieces you need, you can definitely pull for Acheron. There's obviously going to be better supports that come down the line for her that'll work well with her. If you have Guanifan, I cannot tell you how much I recommend Guanifan for using her with Acheron over Pela. I don't like using Pela with Acheron at all. So I use Guanifan. You can also use Welt if you were lucky enough to get him in your first 5-star. So Guanifan or Welt will definitely work if you're a newer free-to-play player. I think that Gwen is more useful overall because she increases your damage dealt and reduces the effect res, which is incredibly important in allowing either March 7's ult to freeze, which gives you a debuff, obviously, and then it also allows Fire main character's taunt to be more consistent because that is reliant on your effect hit rate. You reduce the effect hit rate, the effect res of your enemies, then that taunt is more likely to kick in, which lowers your effect hit rate requirement for the Fire main character and for March 7th. Then beyond that, running Resolution on Guanifan allows her skill and her ult to AoE shred. Mind you that Pela only has a single target skill. Guanifan has a multi-target skill, and like Pela, they both have AoE shreds. So you get up to a 16% defense shred at S5 with Guanifan, and a 30% damage plus increase with her at E6. Pela, I think that her skill in in her composition with Acheron is extremely underwhelming. It just removes buffs and stress ice res at E4, and they don't do much for Acheron. Whereas Gwenifen's skill does a lot more for the characters that she's going to be playing with, so I highly recommend that you run Gwenifen. And then beyond that, if you have any combination of the 2 5-stars that or two or more of the 5-stars that I listed earlier, like I said, you got Sparkle, you got Silver Wolf, you got Kafka, you got Black Swan, so on and so forth. If you have 2 or more of those 5-stars, of course, pull for Acheron. You know, if that's what you want to do, you're free to do that. These are just my suggestions. Take them as you will. And if you have Jingliu already, then of course you should pull for Acheron. Why would you not? You would have 2 of the strongest DPS in the game on your team. As a newer free-to-play player, I would recommend that you pull Jingliu if you do not have these 3 light cones that I mentioned earlier. If you have at least a Dance Dance Dance, either for your Tingyun or your Asta, or if you just have 1 copy of Resolution, if you have at least 1 of those light cones with 1 of these characters, which is not a hard threshold to reach, you're good. You're fine. You have more freedom of choice in your building and your team comps. Like I said, you can use Tingyun, you can use Asta, you can use Pela, and you can use Gwenifen. It doesn't matter. Gwenifen works with Jingliu too. So if you want to use her with your Jingliu team as well, and you don't want to play the risk of running her with Acheron, you can still do that. People do not, I cannot emphasize enough how little emphasis Gwenifen got while we were basically revving up to Acheron coming out. So few content creators were discussing how cracked Gwenifen is. Gwenifen is freaking cracked as a Nihility character and only gets better if you have Resolution. So if you have Pela, you have Gwenifen, right? You can cook with Jingliu just fine. Whereas if you were to use Acheron doesn't get as much value with Pela, but gets a lot of value with Gwenifen. So I think Jingliu takes better advantage of those 4-star Nihilities over Acheron. And obviously, if you already have Jingliu, then pull for Acheron. You should, if you already have Jingliu, be able to pull for Acheron. Because you're a veteran, you pulled Jingliu a while ago, you already have her completely set up, which means that you should have all 3 of these light codes that have been recommended. Therefore, you should be able to pull for Acheron. But it's possible that you don't. Even Gotcha Smack, as an example, literally just got his trend of the universal market, like literally within like the past 2 weeks. And he's been playing the game like I have since the game has come out. So you might be missing one of those light cones. That's one of the reasons why I recommend that if you don't have everything, you don't have all the pieces, unless you don't mind waiting, I would go with Jingliu just because she has lesser requirements for light cones and can be slotted into other different teams. Now, as I've stated for like the millionth time, I am a Fields Crafter. I am a long-time free-to-play player, so this is my perspective as a Fields Crafter, as a long-time free-to-play player. Who you should pull for depends on your account, and you just shouldn't listen blindly to what I say. Just take what I say into account. Think about it if it has value to you, but also do your own research. I've watched so many different content creators to get different perspectives, so I could come to my own conclusion and have my own opinion on these things. My final thoughts: I think that Jingliu is a much better free-to-play option for all the reasons that I provided. She'll raise the floor of your account, and she is much more better suited for newer free-to-play players. And Acheron has a much higher potential than Jingliu, and she'll raise the ceiling of your account, and I'll recommend her for veteran players. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't ever talk about Acheron's traces, and the reason being was in my damage calculations that I showed you earlier, she was using level 1 traces. Just something that I want you to think about, something to consider. Maybe that might also affect your decision. But reminder, all of this was done while having all of the recommended free-to-play light cones. Good night, sleep well, resolution, and trend of the universal market. Let that sink in. If you don't pull for Acheron and you already have Jingliu, that is just a loss on your part. Even the even MTash and all of his quote-unquote patience and his resilience he couldn't quite get past the urge to pull for Acheron. Just something to think about, something to consider. I will, at the very end of the video, put my best run with Acheron just so you can see how she functions with the team comp that I'm using. And if you have any questions or there's something you want to point out to me in the comment section down below, feel free to do that. Hopefully this video was enlightening to you in some way, shape, or form. I hope that it was helpful. And later on, I will be doing a full account review in honor of the anniversary of myself as someone who's been playing free-to-play since the game came out. I've been playing, I think, virtually every day since it came out. So if you want to, see my perspective and how I was able to get to where I'm at, what I've completed, what I struggle with, things of that nature, maybe you're new and you just want to see like some tips, I'm going to be making a video on that down the line. But for the time being, I'm just dropping this video, and I might be dropping some Memory of Chaos runs later on down the line. Like I said, if you liked the video, hopefully you can let me know in the comment section down below, or you can let me know by hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully this was enlightening to you in some way. Have any questions? Let me know. Your boy Ars is out.
鳴り響け、ほとばしる過去の伝線。本質は同じ。誰でも大ついてないね。竜はっ、命のいずれ風に吹き落とされる。楽しいですか？逃がさない。たまには真面目に行くうちのとっておきをくらえ。出発の時間だ。引導を渡そう。涙雨ひっふっ降りてあふれる。ズルはしないでよね。ポン研究の価値。あがく必要はなし。すべてが消える。お金があるなら見てって。よみがえるか。寄ってらっしゃい。一発ド派手に行くよ。涙雨ひっふっ降りてあふれる。殴ったね。私は練習しててよかった。殴ったね。無駄な抵抗だ。お金がないならまた今度。竜たまには真面目にうちのとっておきをくらえ。本質は同じ。引導を渡そう。お金があるなら見てって。ポン生命ははっ命のいずれ風に吹き落とされる。あなたそれすべてが消える。よみがえるか。涙雨ひっふっ降りてあふれる。変身気迫を示せ。速やかに作戦を調整しなきゃ。我に力を。くだらない。トン月光を剣と千の珍奇をも一心同期。この月下で全てを照らさん。 輪をもって尊しとなしおく大佐砲丸をも我に力を。我々はとうに嵐に踏み入った。守るべき者のために打ち崩せ。逃げられぬぞ。ふっ客をもてなさないと。ふっ避けられない一戦。ふっ一家の連中占いましょう。消化勝利世の万物人事をなす。この月下で全てを照らさん。諸悪大佐話し合います。千の珍奇をもって鼓舞一心同期。代価を払ってもらう。はっ砲丸を持ってみふっふっ師匠な陰陽転換。はっいや引けば見逃そう。輪をもって尊しとなしおく大佐避けられない一戦。我に力を。くだらないと月光を剣と我々はとうに嵐に踏み入った。守るべき者のために打ち崩せ。この月下で全てを照らさん。